being interesting. So, um, when did it come out? Oh, today. Very helpfully, we got an announcement of a new trailer, sort of, for God of War Ragnarok. And when I say sort of, I do mean extremely sort of, because this is called Myths of Midgard. And there's just a lot going on. So we're just gonna, do classic Rant Hall of things. And we're just gonna take a look at this trailer. Almost 7 minutes of it. And talk about how weird it is. Because, oh boy, it's so weird. And not for the reasons you expect. Alright, I think we've already solidly illustrated the weirdness. So, when I saw, Myths of Midgard, I figured we were going to go in for full Viking TM aesthetic. Right? It is what is predictable at this point. That we're going to have really lean into the sort of sitting around a fire, wearing furs in the cold winter with a wolf howling, and to stave off the fear, we're telling a story. And in the ashes of the story, or in the smoke rising from the fire, I should say, images will form, highlighting all these dudes with undercuts and braids sitting around listening to this story. That is immediately not what we got. Like, not even slightly. Lovely candlesticks. Weird art piece lamp. Cushy leather chair. Art pieces. Capital A art. A random jug that is as tall as Felicia Day. So, this is what I would call pseudo-Victorian. Like, all these bits are too modern, but they're put together in a way that feels very much, dark academia aesthetic. Let us sit in dark rooms with leather and oak, and all of these books kind of arbitrarily placed around. It's very much, no, it's not dark academia. It's a video games library, right? It is the obligatory library level in a video game. The set. This room is Regency at oldest, exactly, right? I think it is more modern than that, right? I think this is it's contemporary, but contemporary in a way that harkens back to Victorian. And the thing that it does to harken back to Victorian is twofold. Firstly, we got a bit of weird classical reception right there. We love classical reception, and secondly, this shelf. Even though this shelf looks nothing at all like how Victorian cabinetry actually looks, this sort of free blending of object books, with the objects not necessarily having anything to do with each other. Like, it's all paraphernalia from the game, so that's what they all have to do with each other, but there's not really a coherent single thing. And then the books are all this very classic style of bound leather. Bound books with cord stitching and then a pressed leather binding, which is very classically Victorian bookbinding tradition.
It's quite the storm we're having. Seems Fimbulwinter's here to stay.
Okay, but like, why are we having a thunder snow?
It will pass, though. All things do. In the meantime, how about a story while we warm by the fire?
Okay, so this is sort of a real thing. It's a branch outside the window, I guess. Um, Obviously, this harkens back to, say, 1816, when on Lake Geneva, there is an extremely bad storm, and to entertain themselves, Lord Byron and Mary Shelley and Percy. I think Percy Shelley was there too. Regardless, a bunch of very famous and or soon to be famous Victorian authors all got stuck in this storm. And so in their villa on Lake Geneva, they sat around and told stories. And from those stories, Mary Shelley's in particular, became Frankenstein. So, you know, the classic bad weather, let's sit around and tell stories to while away the time. Obviously, a thing that still exists in contemporary culture as well. Not going to pretend otherwise there. But, fun bonus bit, fun history facts. Even if they were going for the Viking TM aesthetic, this would be a real thing that they could refer to. Because there is a long-standing Icelandic folk tradition known as the Kvöldvaka, the evening wake, which, in the quote-unquote long dark of post-medieval Iceland, the term I have massive problems with, the long dark more so than the post-medieval. Post-medieval is just descriptive. But anyway, in the time period when Iceland is desperately poor and everything sucks, people would be reading from books around the fire, and it would particularly be older women would be the ones leading this as the sort of group storytelling tradition. So even with the Viking TM aesthetic, that was what I expected. This sort of tradition of, wow, the weather's real bad, let's grab a book and then read out from it, would be a thing. Now, I'm confused. These books confuse me. Just the Prose Edda. Ghost of Sparta. Even Forest Valley. The boat captain's key to something or other. A Call from the Wilds, the Huldra Brothers, Book of Welding. The Huldra Brothers are Brock and Sindri, just by the way. Lost Pages of Norse Myth, complete with Arthur's Hammer Pendant. This could be a real book. It's not, but it could be. And then there's whatever this... Oh, stop it. Oh, stop it, Raven. I don't care. I can't read what this title is because it's too faded. I'm confused. Because... Firstly, you know, all these other old letterpress books. Look at all these. Look at these books. Look at these books. Actually, we can go farther back to get a clearer shot of them. Yeah, that's relatively clear. These ones. You can see, right? These solid single-piece leather with the cording across the back. Blah, blah, blah. Then we go here, and it's like, no. Paperback. 1970s paperback. Incredible. I mean, we love the sheer brazenness of the time blending. Call from the Wild, the rip-off Jack London novel. Not wrong. This does look, and you're right, this looks exactly like Neil Gaiman's book. It's not Neil Gaiman's book, but it looks like it. And then this says, oh, Tales of Norse Myths and Legends. So, I don't know, 1930s, 2020s, just the Prose Edda. Now, my big question, I'll be honest. How the hell did they get a copy of the Prose Edda this thick? Like, that is a not insubstantial book. That is a not insubstantial book right there. The Prose Edda isn't that big. In a modern translation, Gylfaginning's only 50 pages, and depending on how you format the poetry, Skaldskaparmál Mall is not that much bigger. No, this dude. Giant print. Giant print. Like, it's... They must have included Hautatal, which nobody includes Hautatal, because Hautatal is weird. Chad, if you don't know, the Prose Edda has 4 bits. It has the prologue. It has Gylfaginning, which is our prose standard regular history Q&A about the history of the world. And then big font, big pictures. We love it. There's Skaldskaparmál Mall, which is a list of poetic names for things, with big long poetic quotations. And then there's Hautatal, which is a treatise on poetic meters, with original compositions by our very own Snorri Sturluson to illustrate them. Maybe it has around 55 different authors and translators. You're also not wrong on that. So we have the introduction, we have the introduction to the edition, we have the translator notes, we have the briefing on Icelandic orthography, we have the learned footnotes, we have big text, and we have pictures. Incredible.
Nice.
And then naturally, by the way, you know, perfectly fine book, 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 fantasy bullshit book. Guess which one we're going to be pulling off the shelf?
That old man sees more now than he did when he had both eyes.
Also, Odin is just like ruining our day even here.
One
So,
of my favorites.
I must... Further confusion. So, Felicia Day just mentions that Odin is spying on us, which, classic Odin things, let's be honest. Please explain. Please explain how this book can exist. This book says that Odin's real name was Priam of Troy. This book says that Thor is actually a Hector. This book was made in the 13th century, and specifically says one must not believe in these gods in any version other than the one told out right here, wherein they are sorcery human refugees from Troy. Please make it make sense.
Than he did when he had both eyes. One of my favorites.
God. What a comically fancy
It's a story of
bookbinding
adventure.
right there.
A father and son working together to overcome insurmountable odds, setting in motion the greatest war the 9 realms have ever seen. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning.
Alright, Chad. How do you think we're going to tell this story? You know. Fine, we're settling by the fire. We've got this chunky fantasy book. Not super thick, but good folio size. Very weird cover. I don't know. I don't know. It's fine. I'm sure this is fine.
There was
Lovely, lovely concept art. Big fan. Right? Love the sketchwork. Love the implied thing that this paper is cotton or linen. The title of this book is just 1 Omega, which I think is pronounced oo. You're not wrong, Agalias. Well, obviously it's a symbol of the Ghost of Sparta, and therefore of the franchise God of War. I also choose to believe that the name of this story of adventure is oo.
Let's start from the beginning.
Are you ready for this?
There once was a god from a far-off land who settled in Midgard, disguised as a man. He started a new life, had a wife and a boy. They were happy together. In peace, they found joy.
Chat, do you see the problem yet? Do you hear the problem yet? This was the part where I had to just like, when I first watched this, I had to just like stop and be like, what? Huh? Help? What's happening? Not only is she rhyming, not only is it rhyming, it's a very specific meter. It's tetrameter couplets, aka 'twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. We're literally getting hit by 'twas the night before Christmas God of War edition. It's a frickin' Mother Goose rhyme. So on the one hand, this is super professionally interesting. On the other hand, I kind of hate it. What gifts will we get in this? Death, doom, destruction, and mayhem? Madrasa, welcome. Did you just tune in? Madrasa, I need to inflict this on you as well.
Getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning.
And by the beginning, I mean pain.
There once was a god from a far-off land who settled in Midgard, disguised as a man. He started a new life, had a wife and a boy. They were happy together. In peace, they found joy. His wife passed away. Kratos mourned with his son. But where one journey ended, a new had begun. Faye's final request, though it seemed rather bleak, spread my ashes atop the 9 realms' tallest peak.
Great. Incredible. Okay, perfect reaction, Magistrate said no notes. So... Well, let's talk about why this is professionally very interesting, even though it is deeply distressing on most other angles. So, we talked about how the set is already doing this weird thing where it's like this pseudo-Victorian vibe. This one just confirms it, right? It pulls us specifically into the realm of kids' rhyme. These sort of Mother Goose fairy tales, and through them pulls back towards fantasy, right? So one might think of, I don't know, Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales as something along this trajectory, or the Grimm brothers, even though these are actually not really of the same era. Like, the Grimm brothers are collecting pretty early in the 19th century. Hans Christian Andersen is, I believe, also actually in the first half. A lot of our Mother Goose compilations are with the development of children's literature in the 1880s. So there's actually quite a bit of a disconnect here, but they're both broadly get looped in imagination into Victorian. Right. That's super cool because what that's doing is that really making explicit a blending of uh, children's literature, stories, and mythology. Right? This is something that's super well documented in the academic literature. This idea of mythology as being something marketed towards children. Uh, you'll see this. You start to see this, I guess, in the later 1800s. You get these kind of pseudo children's things. In the 20th century, you could say like Barbara Walker, mythology compilation is targeted towards children. A lot of like Hilda Ellis Davidson's retellings do get pushed at children by booksellers. You start to see world mythology encyclopedias being marketed as children's lit, etc. Like, raise your hand if you grew up. Raise your hand if you grew up with at least one mythology book as a kid. Raise your hand if you had all of the mythology books as a kid. I had multiple Norse ones. Yes, that Walker. Notice I put when I said mythology. When I put when I said mythology, this dude, I put it in scare quotes because I would not say what Walker is doing is mythology, but it is marketed towards young girls. But yeah, Jazz Chant is full of yeses. Admittedly, we are a group that self-selects for having this. King Arthur, Greek, random other pieces. I had Norse as well. I had a couple of different Egyptian ones, and I had the multiple world mythology encyclopedias. But yeah, Greek ones, super popular. Who's his face? Heck. The guy we make fun of for Celtic stuff. Crap. Why am I bad at names right now? Uh, Not Rally. Heck. Um, anyway, yeah. Right. I wouldn't even think Rick Riordan is kind of the generational evolution of this Magistrissa. Uh, a good shout. Graves, thank you, this dude, for being my brain when I cannot. Um, right, Graves wrote a compilation of Greek mythology that got eviscerated, but was still very popular. And in terms of like compilations of Irish mythology, lol. People like Graves absolutely get marketed towards kids, and you still see some of these old compilations. There's one from like 1920 for Norse mythology called Children of Odin that still gets circulated in print, generally targeted at kids. So it's like this weird sanitized mythology. Uh, that of these like late 19th, early 20th century compilations uh, get transmitted into the realm of kid story. Admittedly, something therefore very fake and lighthearted, not something that is very explicitly believed in and powerful, both psychologically and socially powerful, and that well, theoretically, possibly, maybe, question mark, could get you killed for sufficient disbelief in it. At least if we trust us, the legends, for being accurate representations of themselves. Not sure we can do that. I'm getting down a brain spiral that is just does not become interpretable to anyone except for me. But yeah, right. So this we see the like cycles of development, right? As you said, right? Popularization in the 60s and 70s, alongside emergence of pagan revival groups, and these groups then creating their own materials for their kids to grow, who are growing up in these new belief traditions, and then from there even further into the realm of modern translation and the realm of modern retelling. Neil Gaiman, Rick Riordan, and the 5 quadrillion translations thereof. In the context of this, though, we're looking at that very first generation, which is just real funky. And it's the thing that's so funky to it is, to me, is like I think it's fairly unproblematic to say that this sort of rhyming couplet tetrameter right is targeted for kids, right? It is a very kid-like literary form, right? You read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" as a kid, or you get it read to you as a kid, and then you go run and hide under the covers. And I mean, what are some other good examples? I mean, that's the most obvious example I can't get it out of my head. But right, it is very much that sort of literature targeted to kids. So you have this maternal figure reading to kids in. Yeah, I guess Green Eggs and Ham is in the same meter, though it's, several generations later, and so it doesn't really quite fit. But regardless, right, the books of Mother Goose rhymes, however we want to classify what is and isn't a Mother Goose rhyme, the entire compilation of them, the maternal figure reading in the evenings to children. That is explicitly the aesthetic that this promotional material is drawing on. Right? I mean, measures, I didn't just mean the era, but I think keeping it to the era makes it easier to interpret. But I think it's a fairly non-controversial thing. Chat, if it is controversial, do let me know. But the baffling thing to me is this is for a God of War game. This is a very M game series, right? Peggy 16. This is a targeted at adults game, and they are marketing it using the metrical and social stylings of Victorian children's rhymes. And just it's funky.
As they readied themselves for the long road ahead, a stranger accosted them in their homestead. Balder sought answers as Odin's hand. Kratos gave none to the Aesir firebrand. They made way for the mountains. Kratos taught the boy skills.
Now,
Keeping godhood a secret, but training to kill.
this, I suppose, could
Gods
be...
were always in danger, this Kratos knew. But secrets, he'd learn, could harm the boy too. They found Mimir in a tree. Punishment for his wrongs. So, they lopped off his head. And they brought him along. Mimir held ancient wisdom and knew the lost god of war. He warned, tell the boy. But Kratos ignored.
No, no! Now hold on a minute. Is that all that's in there about me?
Before we have this interlude about Mimir being upset that he does not play a central role in his own story, I feel the need to observe that they are sanitizing it, right? We could make an argument that this is a deliberate throw to what I said earlier about these Victorian compilations of mythology being targeted for kids. As they turn towards being targeted for kids, and they get sanitized and made quote-unquote appropriate. And you can see this going on, of that even though, they mention the word kill, but then they don't actually, show anything, and they certainly don't acknowledge the level of brutality in Baldur shows up and says, hey, give me the stuff. And Kratos saying, no. Ignore the punch fest that comes from that. So, you could make an argument that this is a deliberate sanitation. You could also make the argument the other way, that this means that all the violence in the first game is completely gratuitous and in no way, shape, or form benefits the narrative or thematics of the game. Could go either way. Mattress, I do agree with you. But, the questions that paratexts make us ask.
Something
Now comedy.
Actually, yes, I do. You see, Odin, in all of his dreadfully paranoid wisdom, trapped me in that bloody tree for perceived wrongs.
The
And I
comedy.
led quite the colourful life before even meeting him. It all started when I was just a lad in the service of a great fairy king.
Riveting stuff, really. We'll have to get back to that later.
No! Don't turn the page! I wasn't finished!
If Mimir were telling the story, we'd be here all day.
Yeah,
Anyways, they met Freya, masquerading as a witch in the woods. A god knows a god. She was
Mattress, it is Felicia
She
Day.
cautioned
Like, that
her
is
lust
the
for your son
brand.
is divine. But Kratos dismissed her. He'd regret this in time. On the road, Baldur's allies, Thor's sons, attacked. Something snapped in Atreus as he tried to fight back. The Aesir lost the battle, but Atreus fell too. Kratos rushed him to Freya. She would know what to do. Freya was disheartened with the father's neglect, but with the heart of Hell's troll, she could save his son yet.
How do they deal with...
Kratos thundered through Helheim and slew the great troll. He had captured its heart, but in his, burned a hole. He returned with his offering. Freya cast a keen spell, and Atreus was healed, though not all was well. Kratos sat with his son, and for once he was true.
The art is
Revealing
gorgeous,
he
by the
was a
way, for
god.
this. Like,
And Atreus was too. Delighted at first, it seemed all would go smoothly.
I
Then
do
arrogance
love
followed and bent
how they're doing the
Atreus
animation
toward
work,
cruelty.
and
With
these
tensions
sketches
flared,
are
Baldur preyed
incredible.
on their discord, casting back into Helheim Kratos and his ward. In Helheim, they learned Freya caused Baldur's plight. His mother's ill-conceived curse robbed his life of all light. They emerged from the realm as they neared Journey's end, but Baldur appeared and attacked once again. Atreus and Kratos were ready this time, stronger together with their power combined.
That being said, if I have to nitpick, skipping over Atreus committing cold-blooded murder, yeah. Skipping over Kratos committing a lot of cold-blooded murder too. Skipping over a lot of stuff, actually. But if I have to do one tiny nitpick, why are we painting all the way to the edge of the page? Great for like modern print stylings, right? Great for if this is a collection of like digital art. If this is a book that you're pulling out annually and using, literally the worst idea. Do you know what happens to the edge of pages as you keep using them? This is all going to start feathering. And then when you gotta trim it, you're now cutting off important information. Well, sort of. You're cutting off image, at least. And that's sad.
Freya intervened on behalf of her son, begging Baldur's forgiveness for all that she'd done. Baldur strangled his mother. Kratos lunged with a snap. Baldur slumped. Freya wailed. And he died in her lap. Something changed in the world. Snow started to fall. The dawn of Fimbulwinter. The dusk of it all.
Ooh.
Atreus asked, "Is this what it means to be gods? Killing our parents forever at odds?" "No!" Kratos bellowed as he dropped to one knee. "We will be the gods that we choose to be." Finally, together, they reached the Great Peak, finding Jotunheim's temple, the giants' retreat. A prophetic mural showed the life they had led. The boy's mother was giant, they learned as they read. Atreus walked to the cliffside. Kratos eyed the wall slowly. Beneath the boy's picture, a name was etched. Loki. They scattered her ashes and watched as they lifted. Over rolling red hills, the wind danced, and it drifted. Standing side by side,
Spooky.
feeling hopeful and new, the boy was at peace. And the father was too. With their promise fulfilled, they returned to their home. They trained day after day, lest they'd reap what they'd sown. Atreus grew restless. Wary, Kratos remained. Ragnarok loomed as the great winter waned.
Hooray! So that promises us that we're
Don't
not going to
tell
be
me you're
in
thinking of stopping
terribly
here.
snowy stuff.
Things were just getting good.
Well, I suppose we could go on a bit longer.
An excellent idea. This is the most dramatic part. On second thought, perhaps we'd better cut it short.
It seems that we're out of time.
Literally, what's the
I don't know
point?
how this story ends. I'm afraid you'll have to find out for yourself. Until then.
And then we end in the live action with going from pseudo Victorian Mother Goosey children's stuff to be surprise gothic horror question mark? Like surprise gothic horror question mark.
I'm afraid you'll have to find out for yourself.
As the window
Until
bursts
then.
and the fire goes out and everything becomes super cinematic spooky. And that's how they're promoting it? Which, like, fine. Like, if you haven't played Dawn of War 4, whatever, fine. That's okay. It does get all the important plot beats, I guess. But, like, what a bizarre way to do it.
Until then.
What a deeply bizarre way for that to work. Because I just no, the book can go too. No, right. Broadly speaking, I should probably be officially opposed to book breaking. Namely, either cutting open the binding of a book, to separate the pages individually, or just slicing pages out of the book. But in this case, I will make an exception. So let's save the prints, and then we can burn that cover for being in a full, full, like, Elder Scrolls fantasy bullshit book. It's weird, right? I don't actually hate it, right? I know Chad's opinion appears to be very negative, uh, which understandable. I don't personally actually super hate it, um, in that it is perfectly functional and it is professionally interesting. It just has this massive confusing disconnect between being a myth, right? Between having the term of a myth and then the actual content is so much Victorian children's rhyme. And it's like, well, what does that tell us about what this word means? Does that tell us anything about what this word means? Does this is this just a thing that says we're talking about gods here instead of mortal things or semi-mortal things? The actual structure is like, and then have the actual structure be indistinguishable from a nursery rhyme? Is it just because it's about gods? That's fine. That works. That's fine. Or is this supposed to like mean something more significant? And if this is supposed to mean something more significant, then why is it mid 2000 or mid 2010s comedy vibes with a nursery rhyme? Sort of. It's not like that's nostalgic, right? It's it's not like there's actually something nostalgic about curled up in a leather drawing room listening to a book for most people. So it's not like there's just a, oh yeah, harken back to when you were a kid and the first God of War came out, or something like that. It's just weird marketing, right? It's it's just weird. Like, I cannot figure out what's going on because it's so tonally off from God of War that I just don't know what to make of it. But we at least got a little bit of a digression into the realm of the use of mythology and folktale collections as part of children's literature out of it, and the childification of mythological material. So a little bit of professional interest, a little bit of quality reception history, in an extremely weird paratext, namely the promotional material for this game. Hooray! Good job, team. Good job. So, that was a thing. I have fun with that. I do love me talking about some paratexts. And, helpfully, though I don't have access to it, a book did just come out earlier this week about paratexts and historical games by Dr. Esther Wright. So, we might see if we can get them on to talk about that in the coming months. I need to reach out to them and ask, but, that may be something. If you are interested in like talking with someone who looks at promotional material and paratexts specifically, far more seriously than I do, let me know, and I can attempt to make that happen. Because as you can see, there's some real wonky stuff. Like, what does that mean? How does this connect to the game? How does this shape what we want that to? How does that shape what we expect going into the game? And how does that reproduce or challenge popular conceptions about stuff? My answer to all of those with this particular piece is, So, that's great. But hey, marketing is weird like that. But yeah, I think that wraps us up for the stream for today. Nice short one. Just a little bit of a hello. Seeing people. All the information for what's coming up will be coming out in the coming days on Twitter, on Discord, etc. So that's exciting. But as we're wrapping up here, I do want to thank all of our patrons listed here who do make this possible. You are all wonderful. It means a lot. Do want to say, if you are considering supporting the channel, this is far and away the best way to do it. Do consider heading over to Patreon. As I said, right, while this travel was great and it gives me a lot of ideas that I'm going to be sharing with you guys and some really fun content stuff relating to my travels, it unfortunately was very expensive, and being able to continue doing this does mean needing to be able to make rent. So if I know things are tight for a lot of people right now, but if you have money to spare, the best way to support me is by heading over here to Patreon, and it does give you at the highest tier, that $25 a month, does mean I get to play a game of your choice. So you do get to shape what content, make sure that it reflects the things you guys want to see if you do that. So do sincerely consider it. But yeah, otherwise, we will be back sometime later this week for the first bit of the variety streams. We'll probably get those started on, like, I don't know, Thursday. Maybe Thursday. We'll see. It'll publicize it before as I finalize that. But yeah, sometime later this week, and then Sunday with Expeditions Viking. So until then, I hope you all have a good night, and I will see you all around. Okay? Bye-bye. I'm back, and we're going to be streaming regularly. Aren't y'all excited? Whoa. Okay, bye.